All right. So welcome to another edition of e-NABLE Education. We have a monthly meetup. Beginning of each month, we look at what's new in the educational world of e-NABLE. We always have a guest speaker to start things off. So today we have Tanya Lurch. Tanya first started collaborating with e-NABLE in 2014 with the first primary school to incorporate the creation of 3D printed prosthetics in the classroom. She serves as the 12th grade dean of Sage Hill and has also coached varsity cross country and track. Ms. Lurch has earned her bachelor's and master's degree in psychology and an additional master's degree in dance from Hamilton College and a master's degree in mathematics education from Columbia University. She's been working with Sage Hill on her chapter for all these years, and we're excited to have her with us.
Thank you for that invite and intro. And for changing the time zone. I'm going to just put our chapter webpage in the bio, and I'll just give a brief kind of how we started. And then I'm actually just going to talk more about the class I teach, mainly because that was a big thing for me, from going to just working on a hand as a small project to how to make this into a course for high school students that have no background in 3D design, 3D printing, anything kind of that nature. I know Eric has the more advanced kind of college track. So this is kind of the like, get them interested, get them, excited. And then what's really cool about this, and I think everyone in education can attest to this, like I also teach AP stats. I've been a grader for years, and there's rarely a question a kid will ask me in stats that I can't answer or that is novel. But in 3D, it happens once a week. Someone will point something out in one of my tutorials, like, oh, this was a faster way to do that in Onshape, or they'll ask me a question. I'm like, I don't know, let's look into it. So I feel like I'm learning side by side with them. So the course kind of evolves a little bit every year, and our projects evolve, which is always really cool. So prosthetics.org. Nope, that's not how we spell prosthetics. Okay. So that's our website. I'm going to screen share. Actually, first, I'll just show the physical space for a second. So I'm in my office right now. So I'm the director of service learning. And so we have 4 Ultimaker printers. This is my office. And so I used to have a classroom space where I had my printers and the tools, but now I'm in an office space. So I actually teach in the library, which is kind of cool. I teach the class is a hybrid online in-person class. It's called Sage Connected. It's like our hybrid platform. And it was like this before COVID happened. So it was actually a pretty great transition. And so students meet before school at 7:30, from 7:30 to 8. And all of the teaching I do is primarily through video tutorials with instructions to pause and to do things, whether it's through Cura or Onshape or Mesh Mixer or whatever it is we happen to be doing. And then the in-class time is for questions, and then it's very project-based. They have to come in and work on things. So my doors are always open to my students. I have all my tools here and in these cabinets labeled. We have 4 Ultimakers over there that I have an eye on, and we have the bins of the filament with the dryers underneath. So this has been, it's very visible. My office is glass, so students have to be really on top of the organization and just making sure things are in the right place. When I started with e-NABLE, again, it was, early 2014, we did kind of a trial hand when I worked in New York, and it was like the original Phoenix, and we made it with Wolverine spikes. It was super successful. My friend was the producer of ABC News in New York, and he was like, we got to get this on film. So they came in, and it kind of blew up. Like all of a sudden, all these people were like, we want to do that. We want to do that. And what I started to notice, because I don't know if anyone remembers, e-NABLE used to work with the matching system. You would like request, and I think it was Mel who would give us a recipient. And then we kind of moved away from that. And it got to the point where we all were like, well, I know there's more people out there who need hands. They just don't know about us or know how to access us. And the people who do have the resources to search online and request a hand, there were more people wanting to, schools wanting to do what we did. It looked very glossy in the ABC News kind of YouTube video, than there were recipients. And so it was kind of challenging. So one thing I started to do is work, just try to find local recipients, because we found the most value in having people be able to come in, get measured, be a part of the process and have our students work with them. So then it became a service learning project where my students met for a full day once a month. That's the structure of our school. And we had, we were finding some local recipients. We were working with recipients maybe we had from a few years earlier that had gotten older and had outgrown their hands or had some feedback. Some of them maybe wanted new kind of design ideas, but even so, just working specifically, on this project, it felt like it, there's learning and there's a learning curve, and I would get students for a year or two and then they would graduate and I'd get new students. And I was always hunting them down. Like, if they start a print that takes 20 hours, they're going to leave for the day. And I got to remind them to come back, and I might not have them in stats. So I just felt like I was always chasing kids down, and we were very rushed. And I really wanted to take the proper time from start to finish, to show them, like, I appreciated the enthusiasm. And, you would get one kid who's really great, and then one kid who's just kind of like showing up and leaving. And so it just felt very inequitable, like the workload. So eventually I was like, this has to be a class. So I'm here at Sage Hill. We moved to the West Coast, and all of the courses at my school have UC accreditation and approval. So I went through that process, and that was when it became clear that, we couldn't have a full year course for juniors and seniors. That was just the prosthetics element. Like, we really had to incorporate all sorts of other things. So I'm going to share my curriculum and what I go through. So we use Canvas, which some of you might know. Okay. So this is my Canvas page and my modules. And so we meet 3 days a week, are required from 7:30 to 8. And as I mentioned, the homework assignments are all done, either independently or mostly tutorials. But we start our first unit, Intro to 3D Printing. And the first year I offered this class was well before COVID. So this was kind of, just the format of it. So, you can see I'm not going to go through every single one, but I have some PowerPoints, there's discussions, there's, each of these PowerPoints for the 3D printing process. Intro to 3D Printing has videos embedded, articles. So each homework assignment was about 30 to 40 minutes, and then they had questions or quizzes that they had to do. Then we have a unit about our Ultimaker 3D printers. And again, this class is, we do have a robotics team. We have some kids who are more familiar, but my class is specifically for kids who have never, they've never even seen a printer print. They've never even seen the machine. So there's all of these are videos that I had filmed. And so we start with a sample cube. So we have 3 Ultimaker 3s and 1 Ultimaker 2, thanks to the generosity of some families at my school who donated funds. We started with an Ultimaker, the wood one that you assemble yourself. Ultimaker donated it to us. I don't know if anyone remembers that one. So we started with that 6 years ago. That got us through about a year. A family then got us an Ultimaker 2, which was great. And then, over time, we got some more funding from really generous families who were like, this is so cool. I had a student who was missing a hand herself. No one knew. She would wear sweatshirts. She played tennis. No one knew she was missing a hand. And she signed up to take my class. Her parents were like shocked that she would even put herself in an environment where people might focus on her arm or hand, because she was so shy about it. And I watched her kind of come out of her shell. We never acknowledged it. Like, I never put her on the spot, or we never wanted to, use her as an example, but she became a mentor. And she ended up connecting me to, she started she has a local group called the High Five Project, where kids from all over Southern California, like high school and younger, they were doing kind of social meetups, like going to basketball games and all sorts of kind of cool events to get to know each other. So she started connecting our group to a lot of these local recipients. And that's kind of how we got this local community. So most of the hands we make are for people who are part of the Helping Hands chapters nearby. So I do, if we have a lull in recipients, I will go to the e-NABLE, the recipient page, I'm blanking on it, like the hub where people request it. And we do some international ones as well, or some more complex cases, but we try to do as many local recipients as possible. So we have our Ultimakers. We start off where a lot of the work has been done. I have a sample cube that's been sliced for them, and they basically learn they're all loaded. They just have to press start and watch the print and assess it. And then as we get further, then they have to change the filament. They have a little lab report that they fill in every time they do a print. Then we go into the troubleshooting stuff and the maintenance. So the hardware, lubing the axles, the cleaning the bed, vacuuming underneath, opening the back, the wheel, and using compressed air to get the gunk out of there, making sure the Bowden tubes are empty. So I have them do all of the troubleshooting. These are all assignments that end up on their kind of Canvas calendar. Some of them really like printing supports with PVA. They think it's really cool. I honestly think it just takes more time and is not as like the settings in Cura can be done so well that the support can be broken off really easily if you need it. So, but I do always have kids who want PVA, and like even with the dryers and our environment, it needs to be dried. So I have them do that. Once they know all about the hardware and are very comfortable with the hardware and troubleshooting, then they learn about Cura and the slicing software. I don't know if anyone saw Cura had a 5.0 that update that just came out. That's pretty cool. It's got some really nice updates. So we go through Cura. So this is all happening in the first semester. We're on a traditional 2-semester. In this is where they start with group projects. So they get a couple, they get one where they have to print like it almost looks like a pyramid, but they have to print it upside down with supports. They have one where they compare infill density and speed. They have one with layer height. So they do 2 prints and they can see the difference, and they can select whatever settings they want within certain parameters. I have a little system where they hand things in. It's not complicated. There's like Post-its with their names, and they just put their objects on top. And that's how they turn their work in when it's physical work. And support blocker, the unlimited palm is one that comes up a lot, obviously, because when you're doing the one with the built-in support is very easy, but if you're doing one of the arms, you do need support in there, but you can't go everywhere because it'll get into the little holes. So this is a specific assignment they have where they have to do support blocker on it and just make sure support is only in the middle there so that they can practice with that. Then we go into the prosthetics unit. This is where they first learn about it. So they register, for the e-NABLE hub. I have a whole presentation with upper limb differences. We go through all, the different devices, why someone might get one versus the other, elbow actuated versus wrist actuated. We look back at old recipient videos and pictures. Then they learn about tracker. We go through tracker, how to measure, how to take different measurements. We go through OpenSCAD because we need that for a lot of the different hands. So these are all assignments that they are doing like on sample files. TPU settings is another big one, obviously really tricky to print with, especially if you're using the 85A shore hardness. Also challenging on an Ultimaker because it is the drive is in the back, and so you're pushing the flexible material forward as opposed to something like the Creality where the drive is on the nozzle itself, which is a little bit easier, I find. So these are all, again, assignments where they're kind of sample stuff. They still don't have recipients. In the background, I am connecting with recipients to line up a few for our group. Then we start going into their sample hands. So then they start doing sample hands, so prosthetics. I feel like I'm out of order for a sec. Service learning, let's see. Nope. So then we do a sample hand project where each group is, we have basically one per printer. And so they're kind of in charge of maintaining and working with their group's printer for about 2 or 3 weeks. And they each get a different hand design. So I'll have one group do a kinetic hand, one do an unlimited arm, one do a Kwawu 2.0 socket, and one will do a Phoenix. And we do, I use an old recipient and they go through the whole process. We're not actually making it for a person, but they measure, it's for an 8-year-old. So it's small. So the prints are quicker. They do the whole thing. They assemble it, they turn them in. So I have a whole bunch of them. Some of them I'll give them an old recipient that was, missing had a thumb. And So they're all kind of these mini scaled down versions, but they go through the whole process. And so this was something new that is a luxury in the class, because when I did the service learning project, we were always making for a person, and we never had the chance to like troubleshoot and go through and work without the pressure of giving it to an individual and disappointing someone. So this has been a really nice element to just like let them make mistakes, and you know, and then I keep the ones that where they've made certain mistakes, and I've kept ones where they're perfect, so that I can show kind of the common mistakes. Eric, your gripper thumb lives on. Sometimes we have a group do that. If I know that I have a recipient who might be a good candidate for something like this, we'll do that. But we mainly do kind of kinetic arm, Phoenix, and then the other two arm devices. Once they do that, then they get their first set of recipients for the fall semester. And I try, as you know, a lot of it is, look, you know, again, we try to get local ones. We did have this year a couple overseas, one in South Africa, worked very beautifully and smoothly, and we got to Zoom with them. Another one in India, unfortunately, when it went through customs, they like disassembled the whole thing. And so he got it and it was completely taken apart, and it was $100 to ship it. And it was very disappointing. So I'm trying to stick more in the US, because we have a little bit more control over that. But this semester we have I had a student on Christmas break in Sri Lanka who met a gentleman who had an old broken prosthetic, and she has family there. So she knows someone traveling back there at the end of May. So we're making 2 different arms for him, and that family member is going to transport them directly. Everybody else is within the US for us this semester. So first semester is really just like gearing them up, and then they complete their first recipient. So we end first semester in December. The prosthetics are done. Then they go into second semester. We start off with Onshape. So we go through a whole bunch of Onshape tutorials. And so these are like just a ton of things. It's me making things, and they're watching and pausing and repeating. And by the end of it, and I'm not like inventing the wheel. A lot of these are like YouTube tutorials that are pretty standard. If you open up Onshape and you like type in a certain, you know, like the pencil, like you're going to find tons of people making these same projects, the dice, etc. So these are all, it's 12 total. And by the end of it, like they can pretty much do everything that Onshape, you know, they can get around it. And then again, we have some of the students who, this is where you see some differentiation. Some kids will really start getting creative and confident, and they'll find shortcuts or other ideas, and they'll kind of, you know, teach the class when we're all together, hey, I figured this neat trick out. Or they're allowed to do the basic and then embellish it more if they would like to. If not, I have some kids who just like, they have to do exactly what is in the video and nothing else, or they get confused, and that's okay. And so, you know, they can do that too, and they'll still get through it. So that this is probably like a 5-week unit. Again, it's about 3 assignments per week. And then it culminates with a kind of challenge project, which is one of my favorite. They have to do they have to create a phone holder, phone primary, like one of these phone holder, and it has to fold up and or just be the dimensions of a credit card, like the thickness, the size, so that it can go into a wallet. And then they have to create a commercial to sell it. And so they design it, they print it. It has to be an original design. It can't be something that they've modified. And so they work in pairs. And it's the coolest thing, because you have some kids who will create like puzzle pieces that will interlock, but then ultimately fold into a credit card. You have some that print it really thin in certain spots so that they can fold a certain way. You have some who use TPU, you have some who use PLA. I limit the only thing that they can use if they absolutely have to is crazy glue. They're not allowed to use any other like fasteners. So if they want something, so I did have a group who had you know, they had a hinge, and so they had to like print. They really worked around it. They convinced me that they had to use a straightened paper clip to go through it, and I finally let them do it. But it was actually a very cool design. That's why I let them do it. And so that's super cool. And so you know, just seeing the personalities come out. So that's one of the projects that they do. They also, then they have another one later in the year where they have to identify a problem somewhere, either on campus or at home, create something to solve it. So, and again, I want them to not be following anything. So we'll get like, there's, you know, anything from like, there's a door where you know, it's on a carpet and the door stop always slides. So they create something that is better. I have a student, she just created like a grocery bag holder with all these hooks to like hold your grocery bags, and it's fairly strong and it folds up, and it's really, you know, just like random things. I had a kid who he has a very special mug that he loves, and it has a handle, and he wanted it in his Jeep. It didn't have a holder, so he created something specific for that mug that fit, you know, with a handle and wouldn't spill. It kind of shifts a little bit as you drive. It's really cool. So they kind of get more creative there. And then we have another set of recipients second semester. And so now those usually are, I kind of save the more complicated ones that I encounter. And there's a lot of communication with recipients telling them like, you know, this is great, we're going to work with you. The students will reach out, and I give them a time frame. And I'm super honest, and I try to err on the side of like surprising them when we work and finish earlier. So if I get a recipient and, you know, I'm like, hey, we're finishing, you know, it's December, we're finishing the semester, we're not starting on our next set until February. You're probably not going to get your arm or hand till March, April. So if you want to go with a different volunteer, that's fine. But we will happily still make you one if you want a second one. And so that's happened. I've had some people be like, okay, we're going to, you know, work with another volunteer. And then oftentimes they're like, that never panned out, or like, I don't know, we stopped getting responses. So if you don't mind. And so I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And again, sometimes we'll get recipients from first semester. That happened this time. We had a girl we made a hand for, and she was like, after, she was like, oh, I really want to hold a guitar pick. I want to ride my bike. I want to play tennis, and I want to be able to paint nails. So now I have a group who's making her a bunch of attachments and different things for the guitar hook, the guitar pick. And it's really cool to just see them be creative and keep in touch, and get creative with some of the materials and just get more confident with it. So yeah, I think one of I posted about this on the R&D one. We had a recipient we've worked with for years. She's younger, and she has the tiniest, it's like half an inch of residual past her elbow, but she can move it. Like there is a little bone there, and she's really spunky. She's really active. She loves showing it off. She loves bright colors. The family's a joy to work with, and just very open to like feedback. And they don't get disappointed if it doesn't fit or work. Like they're very patient. So we've worked with her a few times, and the Kwawu socket was the best fitting, like she could control it, but the grip strength was not super strong. So the kinetic hand does not take a lot of force to close. And that was her biggest thing. She didn't want to lift heavy objects. She wanted to like hold a doll in both hands. She wanted to, you know, just wear it around and show it off. And so she wanted it to be pink and purple with lights in it. And so ultimately with the help of Eric and connecting it, we're calling it the Mackenzie arm because she loved that it was named that after her, but it's a hybrid of the kinetic hand and the Kwawu socket. And we use one of the ones with the laser holes in it, and we put like tea lights in it that go on and off that she loves. We padded the palm underneath the flexible TPU with a loofah sponge, like a squishy sponge. So it's like a squishy palm, so it can it's not rigid. And it's super, you know, the silicone finger grips, the molds for the kinetic hand, everybody loves those. If you go 10% bigger in the Z direction, they're going to stick out and just actually be really effective. So that was really successful for her. So that now, like I posted that, and we have another recipient with similar anatomy that we're doing that for. So that's been very cool. And yeah, and so now they're I have the groups right now where we have 2 more weeks. There's APs right now. So they're kind of all over the place, in and out. So right now they are all working on their final projects, and their final projects, they got to choose from either making a dog wheelchair, because I'm dying to get into that with the class. And so they're doing they're doing one from Thingiverse that's just like, it's not for a specific dog. They're printing and doing that. So I have one group doing that. I have 3 groups who are making prosthetics either for new recipients or like follow-up ones. We had a woman, it's actually one of the first adults I've gotten who was a recent amputee. She had a car accident. So that was added a layer of kind of emotion there versus someone who was born with limb difference. So she's been really cool to work with, and she really wanted to be able to brush her hair and hold her electric toothbrush and paint nails. So my students, did a whole thing with fake nails and getting those embedded in the hand so she can paint and remove the nail polish, and then getting special like attachment for her hairbrush. And so they're finalizing that. And I'm actually really excited because they've had a few designs and they're like, they didn't think it made sense to make separate ones. So they're running with that. And it's been really cool to see. So the students do most of the communication with the recipients and through the year. And obviously there's, I see them regularly, but there is a lot of independent coursework. And I also have students run our website, which I put in the chat, which is a big one, because we do get a lot of recipients who find us that way, or other schools who have questions. So we have like a nice FAQ. I can pull it up too real quick, and then I promise I'm done. Sorry, I'm from New York. I'm a talker.
It's all good.
So this is, I have 0 coding background. So this is all student run. They do all like, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like your mouse tracks and does things. So they have all, like these are the FAQs, like who's making the hands? Can I buy one? There's all information about e-NABLE in here. We have disclaimers, like these are not medical devices. Like we call them assistive toys or assistive devices. A lot of times we'll get, and this is like when we ship overseas, we include a letter, especially for customs, that set like, it basically describes it as one of those things that somebody who's short would use to grab something from a high shelf, like a claw. Like it's just an assistive device. It's nothing medical. It's nothing, it's not worth very much from a monetary perspective. I get this one a lot. Like people will ask like, hey, I want to start a chapter. So I always direct them to the e-NABLE Hub, like how to get started as a volunteer, read through the steps, get the digital badges. But I get this one a lot, and it's great. A lot of people want to get involved, and I'm like, keep in touch. Let me know how it's going. And then we keep everything like, let's see, our recipients. So we have an archive of all the ones we've worked on. And then we have like our current, these are all the note to self, they have not updated with this semester's one. But Mackenzie, for example, like we've made her hands for, we've had a few instances of making her hands. So we will have those updates so you can see kind of the progression. But so they will do an update there. And then we have the team members that work on the hand. And so that way the recipient can see who the students are. And then so I have a junior who runs this, and you can see all the students, very cute, and then some fun senior pictures. And so the junior who is overseeing the website this year will stay with us next year and pass on all of the code and everything and teach an incoming junior. So most of these guys they're all juniors or seniors. And it's always someone who luckily have always had someone who has some knowledge of coding and can kind of help do this. Contact form goes to my email, etc. And that is our course and our chapter.
And that is fantastic.
Wonderful work.
Oh, I forgot Eric's unit. They're actually doing this now. Eric taught me how to use Mesh Mixer and the scanner, the structure scanner, when we were at the conference at Georgia Tech in 2018. And that's a unit I do too. So I have, I actually link to Eric's videos, and we give you a bunch of credit on there. And so they make the custom socket, the custom, they do the hand scan, they do an object scan, they clean up the hand, then they go through the whole process. I also have some sample, nice scans on there that they can use. And then they do the custom gauntlet for that. And I actually have a few kids right now who are using that in their final project. So that's on there too. There's a Mesh Mixer. And then also I wanted to mention during COVID. So if anyone finds themselves in a purely virtual year like we did for most of last year. This worked really nicely. And our course doesn't have any material costs like other classes, like AP Stats. The textbook is like $300. It's ridiculous. So for this class, when we were virtual, I was like, look, it's optional, but if anyone wants, they can purchase a Creality 3D printer. Well, we had a unit of it regardless. And I'm like, we can do this remotely. So I would say 3/4 of the students bought one. They're like a little under $300. I do teach at a private school, so I think that skews it a little bit, but they bought them at home and we worked on them remotely. And so I paired a student, who didn't have one with someone who did. And the kid who was like, so they would work on design stuff. The kid with the Creality would print it. And then the student without it, they would meet somewhere. Sometimes they would drop it at our school security. And then the other kid who didn't have the printer would pick up all the parts and work on the assembly. So we did that and it actually worked. Like we made devices for, we made like 12 devices last year, even though we were never working together in person. I was on campus a lot, so I was able to put boxes, like shoe boxes of materials, of tools for kids to borrow at security and bring them back. So it is totally possible to keep doing this. And that is the printer that I recommend for home use. So we haven't had to do this unit this year, but I do have a little Creality unit for anyone who needs that.
Wow. I have lots of questions, but I'm going to let other people go first. Or not. Okay, so you've been doing this as a course, which clearly has grown over the years, but for quite some time. Since when? 2014?
So from 2014 to 2016, it was just like a side project. I got basically permission from my division head to good question, Ian. I will answer that in a second. Good question is the curriculum public. So I had gotten permission basically to just like pause my standard geometry class for 2 weeks and do this. And I convinced them that it was very geometric and that there was a lot of measurement in here. And so we just did the like very straightforward kind of, one Phoenix hand a semester with like a small group of 10 students. When I moved to California, which was in the summer of 2016, then it became this service project, which wasn't a course, but I did have the same group of students all year. So it was outside of class. My school has a service learning program. Students who are juniors and seniors can apply to a variety of special interest projects, like ecological restoration, all sorts of things, working at nursing homes, anything they really want. And so this was a project I offered. And so I had like 14 kids. We had the donated wood printer that first year. And so it started like that. We had a Google site that was very, like bare bones. And then it ran that way for 2 years. And then I was like, I'm out. I can't do this because the interest started growing. I did get that second printer, but it was really challenging for it was just challenging. As I mentioned, if you only see them for a full day once a month, we all know a print can take 20 hours. So if they start a print, and we had a system, we're like, we're going to start with the shorter prints, but still by the end of the day, like they still have to come back and check on prints and then assemble. And so it just was too hard. And I'm like, no, I need to see them more often. I need more touch points. I need more incentive for them to actually do, some of them were internally motivated, but like having grades attached to or due dates, like, hey, we're all like, the assembly of this recipient's prosthetic is due on this day. It has to be done. They're much more motivated to fix a clog in the printer than if it's just like a side project that doesn't get graded and they just kind of do because it's service learning, So that's when I got the course approval. So this is the third full year that I've taught it as a class. Next year will be the fourth year. And what's crazy, so my school, our class sizes cap out at 20 students. And my head of school was like, we have very academically motivated kids. A lot of kids come here so they can take 1,000 APs for better, for worse, usually for balance. My head of school was like, hey, no one's going to take this class because there's no grade bump. It's not an accelerated class. There's no, it meets before school. It's only juniors and seniors are eligible. No one's going to take it. First year I had 26 kids. So I had a wait list. Second year I had 28. This year I have a full, like exactly 20. And the next year I have 38. So I have enough for 2 sections, and my contract only has me teaching 1 class right now because I'm doing service learning. So I actually have a meeting to negotiate, like, can I teach 2 sections? So it's, I mean, without any of the kind of traditional academic transcript incentives, it's growing in popularity. I have kids, you know, who are, I hear from them. They're so excited. They're at UCLA doing like exactly this and getting their own chapter started or working in biomechanical engineering. It's really cool. I have a kid, like I even have a kid who was in my class last year. He's not this year. And he did one of the kinetic, the myoelectric ones. And yeah. And so we have the recipients actually coming Wednesday to get it. And so this, I mean, he just like is doing this as a side. So, the interest is, you know, it's pretty great. And I think it really fosters interest in kind of different career paths, and it really helps them with what they want to study in college. I think it is a nice differentiator for college applications, like that they're doing this project and that they took this class. So.
And through this all, you've also got an ongoing stream of recipients by virtue of this collaboration with the high fivers, which is, I gather, a local or a regional.
Yeah, so High Five is local. So it's actually mostly Helping Hands. So Helping Hands has chapters all over, I think mainly the US. They're an organization for support of families with upper limb difference. There's a sleepaway camp that a lot of these kids go to. So I'm always like, take the hand with you. If you find anyone who wants one, like send them our way.
Is this the same Helping Hands that Jeff Powell is involved, or is that just a coincidental name?
I would imagine it's the same one because they're a national, or let me pull, like, so there's.
Well, no, I don't think Jeff doesn't claim to be part of a national Helping Hands, but it sounds like. So have you connected other e-NABLE chapters with Helping Hands?
Yes, in their geographic region. So if like we do it, for example, if I had someone reach out and they're like, hey, like we're in New York and I'm not in New York anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I think there's like a tri-state area Helping Hands, like reach out to them. And so they all have private Facebook pages. But after messaging them, sending them our website, sending them e-NABLE's website, and some of them had heard of it. What I found a lot of is a lot of these kids have had at some point a 3D printed prosthetic or a medical grade one that they don't like or don't use. Their e-NABLE one was like it was like the first iteration of the Phoenix. Once the bands disintegrated, no one told them they could replace them. And they were just kind of like, it doesn't work. And so going back to like, hey, we have, the kinetic hand has been a huge, I mean, people love it. And the streamlined look of it, the grippy fingertip, it fits them a lot more comfortably. So that has been a big one. So that's something too, like when that kind of came out and I was comfortable with making it, we got our badge for it. I reached out to old recipients and was like, hey, we made you a hand 3 years ago. We have this new design. Do you want another one? And then some of them will tell their friends, but I post every year on Helping Hands. I'm like, hi, if you're new, like I run this chapter. If you're not in the area or you have friends from the sleepaway camp, because kids come from all over America for this sleepaway camp, I'm like, please send them to e-NABLE. There's people all over. But I do still, I will watch the volunteer boards, not the volunteer boards. Why am I blanking on it? What is the name where people can go? Is it the hub?
e-NABLE Web Central.
The Web Central. So what I'll do there too is I will look, and if there's anyone within a driving distance of us, I will send that, because usually you'll look on the cases and there'll be like 8 volunteers. And then I think the other person doesn't know what to do. So I will send them a direct message and I'm like, hi, I run this chapter. I'm located pretty close by. Like, by all means, please continue working with one of the volunteers on there. But like, we would love to make you one in addition, in case that doesn't work out, because I found that happened a lot. Like people were getting paired with volunteers and fabricators and they're like, I don't know the difference. And so they just start accepting things. And then there's a lack of communication. So I have found some local recipients that way and just kind of like messaging them directly.
So Tanya, you are a bundle of best practices for e-NABLE. You've got this great course. You've got a good relationship with recipient organizations. You have maintained relationships with your recipients. And I assume you're aware that many people in Enable USA are having trouble finding their way to recipients. And I have to admit that I was not aware of this Helping Hands national organization. So the question is there a way for us to spread the wonderfulness that you have cultivated more widely within the community? Is your course online? Did you record it when you did it virtually? Do you have ideas about the ability of helping other schools up their game, et cetera?
Yeah. So the curriculum, like the videos and everything like that is, I mean, they're not public. I would have to check with my school because they did pay me for the development of it with the UC accreditation. I'm happy to share my like module overview, and then people can like fill in their own, assignments that kind of match the flow of what I'm doing if they're looking for a course of that nature, like our syllabus and the unit overviews and kind of the project overviews. Again, like this is like this. I vote like Eric has been such a huge help for me because this was not, I didn't study this. I'm primarily math. And so this has been like, a lot of it has been self-taught or, watching videos of other things and then being like, okay, I'm going to recreate a similar video. And so a lot of it is, I think a big thing is like, do I need to fully reinvent the wheel if I want to do something like this? And I would say like, absolutely not. Like with the Mesh Mixer videos, and like Eric's got great public videos up there and his university allows him to post those. So like, I don't need to remake those. But on the flip side, for most of my units, like, because my school is a private school and the families pay, and I didn't want them learning, if all of the learning is happening through video tutorials, since we have very little in-person time, like we're on a block schedule here. So by comparison, my AP stats class meet 3 days a week for an hour, 20 minutes. This class meets 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And so most of that material, I wanted them to still be learning from me and my personality. And so, again, like take it or leave it. I'm sure there's other people who are much cleaner. And some people, if you like Fusion 360, Vladimir is a great desktop mix. Like he has awesome videos and tutorials that are public. Some are paid, some are free. So that was really great. I did Fusion 360 at first. I find Onshape just a little bit more intuitive, and I like that you can share kind of documents and projects and like Google Documents, and that it's web-based, and it is free for education. So I did switch over to that, and I found some kind of similar people in the like Vladimir, but in the Onshape world. And I started watching their videos, and I'd be like, okay, like he made a wrench, I'm going to make a similar wrench. And like, I would kind of do it that way. And I say in the beginning of my videos, like, oh, like this was inspired by this person's like, link below. But then it's me doing the tutorial. And so I think if you're a teacher, and this is another reason why, even if my school was like, yeah, post this all over, I would still encourage you to make your own videos, because especially if you're working at the high school level, and you have a full year course. If you're at a college setting, you only have them for a semester and you want to get, like you want a lot of resources, then yeah, like link around. But I think there's a lot of value in kind of doing things in your own style and having, if you're as an educator, and having kids learn from you, because it is a life skill to go through and have various teachers and various angles and like ideas. So I would, but yes, I'm happy if anyone drops their email in there, I can send my syllabus and, absolutely go through that, and, feel free to copy the flow like of what I do. But I think the main things for me in an intro class where we do work on prosthetics is I want them, and it'll depend on your printers and what you're working with. But I think Cure is great. Cure works with so many printers. You can even input your own customizable dimensions. So definitely you want to teach them the hardware, definitely for software, Cura or some other slicer that you prefer, if you prefer one. I like Onshape. Some people like Blender, some people like Fusion, and then Mesh Mixer. And then it's worth going through OpenSCAD and Tracker for virtual measurements if you work with virtual recipients, and actually having those be lessons where they're, it's sometimes hard to follow those directions. So having it all in one place, I think the nature of the community of e-NABLE and people all over is that it's very overwhelming when you start because there's so much resources and so many links and devices. So kind of shielding beginners from that is really important, where you're like, just come here, just do this. And then as they get more confident, you're like, oh, you know what? Why don't you go, like, there is this whole file of like assistive, like add-ons and attachments and assistive devices for holding spoons and forks that you can explore. Because then I feel like they're going to be less nervous by exploring that than they would be at the beginning of the year. In terms of recipients, as a teacher of high school students, I'm always CC'd on that communication. Sometimes we do, like we had a local teenager and he was like, just text me. And so my students were texting him to pick up his hand, that sort of thing. But I had them report back. I'm like, I want to be in the know of that. So I like to monitor the communications. I put, again, as assignments, I'm like, please send an update to your recipient and please send your updated pictures to our website kid to put on the website. And so that these are things that are like, they're showing up on their calendar as things they need to do. And I think the biggest thing is just the communication. And the communication after. It's really scary to follow up with recipients after, because we want to think that we made this cool thing and that their life is better and that it's great. And, sometimes it works that way and they love it. But a lot of times they're like, oh, like we were embarrassed, but this is uncomfortable or this doesn't fit. And that's great, because then you're like, okay, well, let's fix it and let's work with you second semester to make it better and make it fit better. So keeping up with that, checking in year to year is, I think, really important. And then, if you have any local, like, as I mentioned, I happen to have a student missing a hand, but also the Children's Hospital of Orange County. So I sent them a message like, hey, we do this if you ever have someone. And then just our own students, I'm like, keep your eyes open. And we talk about, there's a lot of kind of cross-cultural competency when it comes to either engaging in conversation about this, not assuming anybody wants assistance. We've had great conversation over the colors of filaments and different skin tones and giving recipients the options, especially adult ones. A lot of them want the different skin tones. So we use for adults, wood-based filament because it's matte. And so like our Sri Lanka recipient had a very minorly different shade that he wanted than our recipient from India. And even though like as the budget, I'm like, oh, it's annoying to buy like an extra $50 of filament when we have a whole, but I'm like, no, that's really important. Like this is what this person wants. And this is going to be the most natural for them. So having those conversations, taking good care of your filament and your hardware so that it lasts from year to year. Ultimaker has great customer service. I started with a MakerBot in New York, but we've been Ultimaker for a really long time and they're super helpful. They're expensive though. So, you don't have to get an Ultimaker. Right.
I see Ben has a question for you in the chat.
Yes, Ben has a chat question. Where did Ben go? Am I missing it first? UC accreditation is something that opens doors for many students. What connections do you have with your high school? Which universities are you aware of that are hosting? Oh, okay. Good questions. So, oh yes, Eric, thank you. He agrees that they want to see you making the same content that exists. Yeah. And I like at the beginning, I was very nervous about, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the Onshape person's work that I really like, but I sent him a message and I was like, I love your tutorials. Like, these were great. They are open. And I was like, do you mind if I recreate them and like give you credit? And he was like, you don't even need to give me, just do it. Like, that's cool. And it's funny because people know that this is my original, like Onshape, like it's like a very unique shape that you just kind of keep adding to over the course of a few tutorials. So yes, I think that's really important. And I agree with that. So connections with that my high school has. So what happens is we're in Orange County, California. We have a lot of kids who go to UCLA, UC Berkeley, and USC. And a lot of those students will come back when they visit and talk about what they're doing. So we're right next to UCI as well. We have an internship program that I don't manage, but someone on my team, like in the department I'm in, works on. We don't have any sort of like hosting, anything like that. But the kids who take this class, if they go to like UCI or UC Berkeley or UCLA, they will get that intro credit for intro to fabrication, and they can then go into a more specialized. So they'll come back and tell me about the offerings. So I have like a student who's in biomedical engineering, and then I have a student who's in mechanical engineering, and they'll show me what they're working on. And it's so much more advanced. They have, we don't have a fully fledged makerspace. We have over in robotics, it's very disjointed. We have robotics over there, an engineering class, and they have a couple of Crealities. They don't use them that much. They do a lot with like the really big cutting machines. And then I have the Ultimakers here. Some schools around, like the public high schools, the libraries, they have great maker spaces where kids can just go and use laser cutters and use resin printers and all sorts of things. So I also have the UC approval for the advanced version of this course. So this would be the prerequisite for that one. I have never been able to run it at my school because my school said we can't offer a class that only 20 people are eligible for. It's a whole like registrar master calendar puzzle, but they're like, we can't just add this new course that only 20 kids are eligible for. So I do have that curriculum as well. And that one is much more like working with making myoelectric devices, working with the challenge projects are more involved. I would love to get a resin printer or just get a little bit more involved. One of those, the vacuum sealers, I think we could do a lot of that with that, and molds and just the silicone is so fun to work with. So once you do your first set of finger grips, you're like, what else can I start molding? So I think, for the advanced version of the course, it would be less heavy on the prosthetics, more on the kind of what Eric does with the testing of the devices, like the strength, maybe altering current devices, the myoelectric stuff, I think that's what I would like to see from the more advanced version. This is really just the intro. Yeah. The myoelectric kinetic comes from Praga Michel. He's from Italy. And he is the one that posted everything on this. It's all on Thingiverse. He has posted it on the R&D. He's quite lovely and receptive to questions. And through my students' work last year when they worked, and this year, he edited a lot of the code and kind of updated with the US products from Amazon that we purchased, like the sensor and everything. So I'll put that in Praga Michel. I can put a link. Don't sign off. I'll put a link to that in Helping Hands. And
Great.
yeah.
I'm going to also add, while you're adding that, the e-NABLE USA visioning document. That's something that Eric's put together sort of for the larger education within e-NABLE, trying to kind of compare notes and see what the next steps are for national collaborations. So if anybody on this call, I think actually I saw that Ian and John and Eric have already filled it out, but just for the video anyways, here's the link.
Right. So in that context, Tanya, I don't, forgive me, I don't remember, but are you aware that we're sort of trying to orchestrate this transition of e-NABLE to new leadership?
Yeah, so I gotta be honest, I've been, it gets a little hard to follow with the changes and when we change the platforms. One of my favorite changes has been on the hub, the device page with the different links and the links to the actual materials and everything. So that is something that I interact with regularly. I have, again, with e-NABLE, it's been harder to keep track of kind of at the organization level with the leadership changes and, who we're contacting for what. It was Jen for a while, it was Mel a while back. I don't know. So,
okay.
So I'm not aware. No, not as much.
So I can give you a couple of minutes worth, or
Sure.
Eric might. Eric took the lead in for creating this e-NABLE USA visioning document. But you should be aware, Tanya, that the old timers, Jen has moved on to other things. The old timers, that would be Jeremy and me in particular. and Bob Rieger, who's been doing a lot of the matching and a lot of the chapter maintenance, are all looking to a future that involves less tight coupling with e-NABLE. Meanwhile, Eric and Ian Roy, who's on this call, and Jeff Powell, and I think you are in a really interesting position to say, look, we've been doing it. We know what the possibilities are. So I just want to alert you to the fact that this is the most thorough presentation about education and about how a group with a history has maintained a longstanding relationship with a recipient community. And there are lots and lots of schools around the country that are not doing it as well as you are, or would like to be able to learn from what you're doing. And it would be really great to find some way of, as I say, spreading the wonders that are UN Sage prosthetics more broadly in the e-NABLE community. You're busy, you have a paid job, et cetera, but it's a really interesting moment to think about what can we do to build and disseminate the good work that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, what I would like, and again, I think there's definitely high schools that do this a lot better than we do. I will say, like, just having, when we were moving to California and I was interviewing, just seeing like this, our school had no, like, we did have an engineering class, but there, it was much more like soldering wires, and there was a lot less of the digital fabrication. And so I think there's a lot of schools that have, like, I think you really need to start with the basics. I think what happens is it sounds very cool to people, like, oh, we're making hands for people who need them. And I kind of started moving away from that the more I started getting to know recipients, because I'm like, they don't need the hands, right? Like 7-year-old Mackenzie, like, she's doing fine without her hand. So this, working with outreach, inclusion and outreach at my school and DEI work has really shown me, like, there is so much to be gained from mutual learning and partnerships, and moving away from this like savior mentality or a mentorship model. Like, there's a lot to be gained by like my students are gaining probably more than the recipient is by working.
No, I understand that. That's often the case. Yes.
And so I think when we get new people who are like, I want to do this too. Like, I do think there almost needs to be this, like, and it's not to like push anyone off, but I do think that there's like enough people making hands for recipients right now that we need to start with the education piece. Like, start from the beginning, like learn about your printer, whatever brand it is, learn about your slicing software, learn about the settings, learn about all these things, and then make a sample hand. And then, like, down the road, maybe
Sure.
we find you a recipient or somebody local, and you have to be really, really transparent when you work with these recipients. Like, this is going to take a while. Like, if I was making a hand myself, I could get it done in a few days. But when you're working with a group of 4 beginner high school students who take 7 APs and play sports and have a social life, and like, it's going to take a month. And even then, like, they'll be ready and assembling, and like
A month if you're lucky.
Yeah. And then they'll use the liquid crazy glue instead of the gel crazy glue, like this morning, and they will fuse all of the fingers in place and have to like reprint everything. Or they will, my favorite is, use the heat gun and just like hold it in place too long at the strings, and the strings will evaporate. Like, and that's great. Like, that's a learning process. And so, I think there needs to be room for that. And it's very stressful when you're like, we're making it for a person. So like, you got to do the sample hands, and everyone has to do a sample hand. And that way you can get all those kinks out, and time should not be as much of a pressure. And so from once it kind of, my view shift, I'm like, look, if we make 4 hands this year, like, it doesn't matter, or we make 12, let's just go with, let's go with the pace. So the goal for me is I'd like to do 10, 5 per semester. But if we don't do it, if I have a group that needs more time, like, that's okay. So I think that's for the education, like, if we're going to keep encouraging new people to kind of come into the fold, like, we got to start at the basics education. And then that's where we can see creativity. I have 2 students right now who, I swear, they didn't say a word first semester. And first semester, I group people with like somebody who's strong and then like people who are weaker. So I spread out the strong folks, one per group, who kind of like is the person, my go-to. I'm like, all right, you have a 3D printer at home. Like I can work with you. Second semester, I group them by similar ability. So the weakest kids are in one group and it forces them to step up. And so what happens is like, I have two kids who I mean, honestly, I was like, yeah, these kids are not great. Like they're really just, there's not a lot of sport. There's not a lot happening there, and that's okay. I don't know what happened, but I put them together and magic happens. These two have already, they've made 3 hands. I'm writing them college recommendations. They found their calling. I was like, do you guys work together on they're like, we play basketball together. They had no connection. They're so freaking good at this. And that inspired, like, they're coming up with, they're like, we should do this with the Kwawu. Like we should alter this. So that's where people can kind of get more into the exciting stuff. We're like, yeah, okay, we can go back to that recipient and tell them we want to try this with them if they're willing. So I think really transparent communication, and like, especially if it's a new recipient, not getting those hopes up super high, like set the bar a little low. Like this is a device, it's a toy, we're going to learn together. And the other thing that's cool about it is, and I didn't know this, I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people who are in the process of like trying to get a medical grade prosthetic, there's almost like tests and things that they have to, like readiness that they have to pass to get insurance to cover it. And for some of them, just the like receptive, being able to say, oh, I have a 3D printed prosthetic. I have experience using it. I like using it. It's limited, but that bumps them up a little. Like they have a better chance of getting.
Isn't that interesting? I've never heard that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people say that, like, oh, we're trying to get this insurance, but like she's never had a prosthetic, and so they don't want to spend $30,000 in case she doesn't use it. So this is a really nice thing where then the family can send videos and stuff to insurance and be like, here she is playing, doing her nails with her printed one. Like, can we get the better version? So there's so many benefits if we look at it that way. And it, like the woman who just had this accident, like that was a really tough one for us because every step of the way was really emotional for her. Like even seeing, so we're going to make her a skin matched one. And then that like really upset her. And so then we made her a purple one. We had a recipient who wanted a cosmetic one. So we did a scan, we mirrored it. We had a socket. We got a silicone hand painted skin that matched her skin. It was like perfect. She wore it for her wedding, never touched it again. I asked her what happened. And she said it really threw her off. Like it really freaked her out. She was like, I've never had a hand. And I thought I felt incomplete and I wanted it for my wedding. And then it was like too upsetting. And so
that's okay.
Yeah. And that's okay. And so, there is, Lauren LSK Foundation. So Lauren Scruggs Kennedy, she's up in LA. She's famous. She's married to Jamie Kennedy of the E-Network. So she was actually friends with the student I had. She lost an eye and an arm in a propeller accident. She was a model. And so she has a foundation that gets, cosmetic leg and arms, and with this skin painted silicone. It's amazing. And so she kind of helped with that connection and like getting, it's pretty cool, but it was just really interesting to hear the experience of someone who was like, yeah, I actually like really, like it freaked me out. So, there's limitations, right? I'm like, okay, well, we are not, we're not a psychology group. Like we're not trying to, so you have to be really careful, I think, from that perspective. We've had, I will say something that we have failed at, and we had somebody who needed like the Nick finger type thing, like just the finger devices. I've tried so many. We've tried the frog hand version. We've tried the Nick fingers. Nothing seems to work. So we have not really been able to. So I stick to the wrist or the elbow based. I've also had to kind of send recipients to Nate for if they need a shoulder. Like I'm like, I don't think I can take that on within, maybe in the advanced curriculum, if we ever get that going. So I think just kind of like managing your own expectations for what you need to do.
It's fantastic, Tanya. I see that Ben has moved on, and I need to I'm expecting someone to ring the doorbell any minute now.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
even if you guys want anything, for like, I can send it. Should I send it? I can send Ben like my syllabus if he wants to share that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm capturing the chat.
Yes, do it.
And Tanya, I think you're studiously avoiding taking the hint, but I just want to say explicitly, there are leadership opportunities here. And I hadn't quite understood the depth and breadth of what you have done before. So feel free to think about it.
Well, I mean, like if you can provide more detail, like send me an email with some more information. I run competitively and I have 2 little kids, so
I get it. I get it.
but I will say with full transparency, I am struggling with some elements of my school and I'm not looking to necessarily teach somewhere else, but I am exploring some other options. Our head of school left 2 years ago and things just changed vibe wise a lot around here, in a like not so positive way. He's now the president of the Tiger Woods Foundation, which does an incredible amount of education work, STEM work, enrichment programs for at-risk teens. They have one in Philly, they have one in LA, Orange County. It's really, really cool work. I am trying really hard to get him to hire me to like be a curriculum developer there and kind of get this going for kids who might not be at a fancy private school that has it. I do have resources here and there's families with connections at my school, which helps a lot. Like without the funding, I wouldn't have had printers. I wouldn't have, you know what I mean? So
did I just hear you say,
yeah,
it always comes out at the last minute, that you're shopping around and you're hoping to get this going for people not at your school. And when you say this, you mean
like
this
a
enables
program,
3D printing, blah, blah, blah stuff?
a class like I would love, I mean, I think not everybody needs to take AP Calc BC, right? Not everybody is going to go into a traditional career path. There are some incredible kids who don't know anything about 3D printing, 3D design, Eric's program. Like how cool to just get someone involved in this take this class and then, oh my gosh, they can apply to a university that has more of this that you have. Now you have something to demonstrate in your application. And I've always been teaching in private schools and that's just where I've been. My husband has always been in public and we have very different, he's elementary, so it's much younger, but like this is not like, I'm grateful my school let me develop this curriculum and give me the space for it. But now that I have it, I would love to kind of help. I don't want to teach. I don't want to go to a different school physically. Like we're not moving. I think there's a lot of political drama locally in Orange County in the private schools. Like if I can't really go to another private school and do this, but from a nonprofit standpoint, kind of an enrichment program, as I said, it can be a hybrid course. It can be like a remote course that I could train people in, and then they can teach this elsewhere. Again, remake the videos yourself, that sort of thing. But I think there's a lot of room to spread it. And even if you're not making prosthetics for actual people in a class like this,
Sure.
Making the samples and kind of learning how to reach out to organizations, groups, just be like, hey, we're here if you need us, because that's a big thing in kind of the outreach service world is a lot of people, like we work with an organization locally and I'll never forget at Thanksgiving, this group came and dropped off like 100 turkeys. And this group was like patting themselves in the back, like, oh, we brought you all these turkeys. And they're like, we don't need 100 turkeys right now. Like, that's not what we need. Like, we need some people, we have like a diaper drive going, or we did like, it just was so off base with it. It was just, and so I think that's a big thing with service is like, what does somebody actually need, if anything, and how could it be looked at as a partnership versus like I'm giving this to you or I'm mentoring you in this. So I just kind of want to see that shift when it comes to, I get emails a lot from high school teachers and students who find our website and they're like, we want to help people who can't get hands, like have a hand finally. And I'm like, that's not really how this works,
Right. Well, listen, Tanya, as you're exploring the possibilities for your next chapter, I want you to think of us as potentially a piece of the puzzle. I doubt that we can afford to replace your current full-time job. But if, for example, you were to get some kind of a connection with a sponsoring institution, we do have funding.
Okay.
We are trying to figure out how to develop a stable and more sophisticated infrastructure for what has, after all, has become an institution without being an institution.
Yeah.
And I think you could be a really valuable piece of the puzzle. I just want you to feel free to think of us as potential partners and potential funders of something related to what you're talking about. It all needs discussion, but it's a good moment to be thinking about it. And I've learned a lot today.
Cool. Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, if you have any more info offline, you can send, that would be great.
Okay, we'll have a follow-up
yeah.
conversation. Maybe we'll have a
Perfect.
follow-up conversation with Eric and Ian
Sure.
and perhaps Jeff.
Sure. That sounds great.
Okay, good.
Eric, how are things going with you? You've been on and silent, and it's so nice to see you.
Oh, busy. Just lots of work. Semester's wrapping up, so it's always a crazy at the end of the year. I don't know. I put this in the chat, but I'd like a template of your website would be awesome.
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. Yeah, so I had students, they coded that from scratch. It's hosted, we're hosted on GoDaddy, but they have fully backend. I'm not AP Comms, like I have no idea. I have a Google folder that has, I can share it with you and you can go through it. And if any of that makes sense to you, like the GitHubs, I don't know, like, please,
Sure.
Yes, take it. I will send that to you.
I can do coding. I also thought, are you allowed to bulk download your course materials? Like, does your school own it, or do you own it?
So it's a good question. I never signed anything, but they paid me $6,000 once it was like a course offering. And I'm pretty sure that they own it, but I don't know. I have it too in my personal Google Drive stuff, but like,
I know,
right.
My university pays me all the time to build courses.
Okay.
But that's just paying me for the right to use it. And I still retain ownership of all that. So I can take that and use that wherever I want. I don't know if your school is the same. That's
the way our IT was, but there's a good chance, Tanya, that your school has an IP policy, an intellectual property policy to cover this kind of thing. It would be good to find out what it is. But the other thing is that this thing is a tremendous credit to Sage. And if they were to disseminate it as, for example, the Sage school model for 3D printer education or something, it might be a really good marketing tool and a really good way for them to take some credit for what they have in fact sponsored into existence. So we if that's a challenge, there's a certain chance that we could help them recognize the enlightened self-interest of making this more widely available. Remind them that all the best schools like MIT make all of their courses freely available because it increases their stature.
Okay, that's really helpful. I will find out. Stay tuned.
Great.
Or if you could potentially even host it up on Coursera or Udemy, and then you can get some money off of that, some passive income. I'm sure e-NABLE people would pay $1 to have access to all that stuff.
I mean, I would not mind. I'm like, I gotta check. I know, like, the syllabus wise, and like because I have everything in my Google Drive, and then it's obviously posted to Canvas. The video tutorials are all on YouTube. They're currently like unlisted, or the private links or whatever for the students in my class, but
Tanya, it does occur to me that we're in a new era now. We're in the post-COVID Zoom era.
Yeah.
And I saw yesterday that the Khan Academy is now offering a virtual high school.
Oh, that's
as
cool.
a private school for, using all of their stuff. Whether the particular materials you put together for Sage are available or not, if you're looking to strike out on your own, you have a really interesting asset that you could reproduce and quite possibly license to schools or make available an online course or a free course that, people get coaching if they pay or something. I mean, there are many ways this could happen, but you've got your hands on a really interesting educational asset, which also does real good for some of the people who get these devices, as well as for people who are going to be more oriented towards service learning and so on. So there are a lot of potential ways of developing this if we have someone like you at the front of it.
Yeah, no, all super interesting. Yeah, I don't know how any of that stuff works.
That's all right. You get to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I created it just to make my life easier because I was like, I want to keep doing, working with e-NABLE and like the 3D printers and the prosthetics, but I was like, I just can't do this as a side project with 5 other 8 like math classes I was teaching. It was just too much. So this was a way for me to reduce my course load. And then I ended up taking the admin job working with service learning. So now it's the only class I teach.
Interesting.
So now I'm technically part of the science department, but yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. Let's circle back.
Yeah,
in a few
I'll
weeks.
send. So Eric, I'll send you our website stuff. You can feel free to make sense of that. I literally just year to year, I'm like, yep, we're gonna pass it to the next student, pass it to the next student. So I'll send that to you, and then I'll just reply to everyone who was on that email with the syllabus and just see.
Let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds
Great.
good.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Tanya, congratulations. It's a great story.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. This was super fun. It was great seeing you all. Eric, did you just get engaged too, or did I just make that up in my head?
No,
I did.
You did? Okay, congratulations.
2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Congrats. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. I gotta pick up some extra summer classes to pay for the ring.
Right. That's right. That's how these things work. But very exciting.
Very worth it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.